Good evening, everyone. Dearest Sangha, can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay. I don't think we have anyone new tonight. Nope. Good to see everyone. I'm going to start with our noble community. Our noble community, we gather here together with one another, with all humanity and life on earth. We gather here on the unceded lands, in my case, of the Bohicket, the Pidi, and the Kiowa people, and in the place where nearly half of all enslaved Africans first stepped on to American soil. We honor our land ancestors with our mindful awareness. We gather here together to deepen our solidity and renew our freshness through mindful sitting and walking, music and breathing, and speaking and listening. We affirm the capacity within ourselves and all persons of every race, gender, orientation, ability, and tradition to realize peace in ourselves and peace in the world. So tonight I'm going to be discussing the bells of mindfulness from Ty's book, Peace is Every Step. But first, we're going to be doing a purest, unguided meditation this evening, followed by a brief 10-minute walking and meditation. So I invite all of you to get very comfortable in a seated position, if that works for your body. And when you start to get settled, you can close your eyes. Most of you are already doing that. And let your shoulders drop away from your ears. And maybe let your hands relax. Sometimes we clench our hands. And if it works for you, take a few deep breaths with the exhale being a bit longer than the inhale. And after that, you can just breathe normally to settle the mind. You might choose to focus on your breath. And when the mind wanders, which it will inevitably, I'm going to turn up my volume. Just gently come back to the breath. I've said this before, but I like to treat the mind like a puppy. You'd never be harsh with the puppy, so don't be harsh with your mind. Just invite it to come back to the breath. So tonight, as we sit, I'm going to invite all of you to notice any sounds around you that bring you back to the present moment during your meditation. Could be a distant dog bark. Could be a cat knocking over your water glass. Could be the rumbling of your own stomach. Could be that phone you forgot to silence. Or it could even be a distant church bell. Enjoy your sit. I hope everybody had an enjoyable sit and maybe found peace, even if it was only for a moment or two, or a few present breaths. Maybe you went deeper than that. If so, we'll take a moment. I think we all know what the walking meditation entails, but let's talk about it anyway. I just want to say that I really appreciate that the walking is an option, because when I first started the Sangha, I had a foot problem and I spent many a walking meditation mindfully staring at the ceiling. And it was great that there was no pressure. So, whatever works for you, but I hope if you do walk, you're able to walk with presence and peace and use the sensations of your feet and maybe say a gata, whatever one works for you. And I'll do my best on the bells here. We're going to rise behind our chair, bow, and walk to start, and then we'll do it all over again at the end. So enjoy your walk or your sit or your lying down. All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope everyone had a good whatever you chose. Let everyone get settled and have some water or tea if you need it. And we're going to talk about bells. Heather's already smiling. I think she might know where this is going. Okay, well, if you're back from your meditative state, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on bells of mindfulness from Ty's book, Peace is Every Step. And I'm going to start off with a stanza of a poem about bells, not only because this Sangha seems to be an enjoyer of poetry, but because the author, Edgar Allan Poe, was stationed not far away from here, where I am in Johns Island, at Fort Moultrie on Sullivan's Island. I also chose this poem because it has great onomatopoeia. So here it is, just the first stanza, The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. Hear the sledge with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night. Why the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with crystalline delight. Keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme. The tintinnabulation that so musically swells from the bells, 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 from the jingling and tinkling of bells. So I'm pretty sure that's the lightest thing that Poe has ever written. And I think it probably must have been written before things went sideways with poor Annabel Lee. So anyway, I couldn't believe that Poe had ever written anything so light and tinkly. All right, so now I want you to know that when I write my notes for when I talk, that I write these little headings, and the heading on this section of notes is called Heather and the Bell. Because the reason why I thought I'd talk about this tonight was because about a year after I joined the Sangha, Heather cheerfully asked if I would mind the bell. And she would teach me how, and rather cheerfully I said, oh, of course, I will. I will mind the bell. And I want to say I was a little bit cavalier, and my attitude was, how hard could this be? And I want you all to bear in mind that I came to this Sangha from a Sangha in Colorado that practices the insight tradition of American Buddhism. And, I've come to understand that there are some stereotypes in Buddhism in America. And, if the Zen Buddhists are really strict and disciplined, maybe a little bit perfectionistic, the insight spirit rock people are the absolute opposite. It's like the breezy Californian Buddhists. So anyway, the whole time I was in my old Sangha, I never heard a single bell. So I really didn't know what I was in for. So imagine my surprise when Heather and I spent an hour on the phone together, and I learned all about the bell and something called an inviter. Who knew that a bell had an inviter? I don't know what I thought it was, a mallet or a clanger maybe, but it was an inviter. And I took lots of notes, and the notes had little symbols. So at the end of my notes, I literally had like a map legend. So anyway, it wasn't as simple as I thought. And I want you to know that if for anyone who hasn't become a bell minder, don't worry. It's actually not super difficult, even though I think I pretty much forgot a bell tonight. I'm sorry if I did. But it is important, and I've come to really appreciate the Plum Village tradition of bells, because I thought the bells, even after I got trained by Heather, were merely about the structure of the Sangha. This bell opens, this bell invites us to sit, this one has us walk and rise. But I really, even then, didn't appreciate the bell very fully. So, oh, and full disclosure, the first time I did the bell, I really clanged the heck out of it. I treated it like a cowbell, so I had to tone that down. So I know tonight my bell might have been a little bit light, but at least I wasn't clanging on it too hard, I hope. Um, so anyway, I've come to admire a good bell in the Sangha, and I want to give a shout out to both Heather and Deborah have especially resonant bells. Like sometimes I'm sitting there in the Sangha now after I've become a bell minder and I think, oh, wow, that was good bell. And some people have really, really good bells. I'm going to introduce you briefly to my bell. Okay. She's very pretty. I don't know where I got her. She has a little cushion. I don't know. I didn't know that bells came with cushions, but she sits in a little cushion. She's not a big sounding bell, but I think she gets the job done. And still getting to know my little bell and working out the kinks. But anyway, some people have utterly beautiful bells, and I want you to know that I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the work goes into bell minding, which is really no small thing. So, on a related digression, I also wanted to share that the Sangha bell was sort of the beginning of a deeper bell journey for me. Last year, a friend of mine, Tamara, invited me to something called a sound bath. I don't know if any of you have ever been to a sound bath, but I'm going to highly recommend a sound bath. It is a meditative experience when you are literally bathed in sound waves. So what this involves is lying on a yoga mat on your back with an eye mask and a blanket while someone like my friend Tamara plays not instrument, but really bells and bowls, crystal bowls, some little bells, some very big crystal bowls, and a gong, and sometimes little rain sticks and other things. And it creates an immersive sound meditative experience. So I just want to say here, I know people like Heather who've been to Plum Village have experienced gongs. I had never experienced a gong before, and wow, if you think a bell can wake you up, a gong resonates through your whole body. So anyway, I've done several sound baths since then. I've come to really love them. And most people in sound baths I've found can fall deeply asleep, like my teenage son. He will actually snore through a sound bath. I cannot fall asleep during mine, and sometimes if I close my eyes, or in the back of my eyelids, I see very bright colors, which I guess is not uncommon for a sound bath experience. Some people with bodily injuries and stiffness in their body will experience tingling or numbness or sensations during a sound bath. Once during a sound bath, I felt my mouth and my throat get almost numb, very tingly. And afterward, after the class, I said to my friend Tamara, I had something weird happen to me. I got really kind of fuzzy in my mouth. And she said, oh, that's because I tuned one of my bowls to the throat chakra. Like, nope, no big deal. This happens all the time. So you never know what's going to happen in a sound bath. And it's a different form of meditation. Now, if you're curious about a sound bath, I'm just going to tell you that there are sound baths in Charleston. If you live here, they're very expensive. I would like really crazy expensive. So they do have them on Spotify and YouTube. And I'm going to recommend if you try a sound bath, there's a man named Ben Carroll. That's Carroll with two R's and two L's. He does sound baths, and I guess he used to be a kind of a famous rock star, a rock musician, and I'm way too old to know what his band was, but he has now devoted his life to healing people through his sound baths and trying to raise our vibration. So good for him, and I love his sound baths as I'm trying to fall asleep sometimes, and there are bells in them sometimes. I don't know about the science of a sound bath, but I will tell you this, that the first time I learned to meditate, it was at the Kripalu Institute in Massachusetts. And I had this wonderful instructor, Bhavani, and she taught three types of meditation: sitting, walking and chanting. And she was incredibly passionate about the chanting. And she said, we're all just sound beings in a sound soup. And I never forgot that. But she said, sounds are incredibly, incredibly powerful, especially when you're meditating. And I think that was a harbinger of things to come in my life with the Plum Village bells. So, okay, now I'm finally going to get to what Ty has to say about mindfulness and bells. So in the book, he notes, which I'm assuming is just the Plum Village tradition, that the bell is a tool for bringing us back to the present moment. And, I didn't get this at first, but, I did realize that I remembered stories about Zen monks using a stick to whack people with it during meditations, or disciples randomly whacking young disciples with the stick, getting them to wake up to the present moment. And I realized that the monk stick is the bell. And I'm appreciative that the bell is much, much gentler than the monk stick. And I think if Plum Village has an American Buddhist stereotype, I think it's probably we're the gentle bell Buddhists, the Thich Nhat Hanh bell Buddhists. Because I just think it's such I don't know about other sanghas beyond these two, but I just love that there's so much bell and so much gentleness in the Plum Village traditions. Okay, there's something Ty says in the book that I think is quite lovely, which is another gata, and that is breathing in, listen, listen, breathing out. This wonderful sound brings me back to my true self. And when I read this line and I was thinking about bells, I remembered that sometimes Heather would judiciously use the bell during our harvest sharing if the sharing became especially intense. And it brought the speaker and the sangha right back to the present moment and right back to safety. And I'll talk more about grounding in a minute, but back to Ty for a minute, back to the book. One thing I appreciated about a passage in the book is that Ty was not a bell snob. I mean, he was not a snob about anything, but he was really bell agnostic, and he was not going to let a good bell go to waste. And one of the things that I thought was funny was he said that in the West, he didn't hear many Buddhist temple bells. Honestly, I've lived in a town, Boulder, Colorado, that had a Buddhist temple, and I never heard a Buddhist temple bell. But he said, fortunately, and I guess he was writing this in Plum Village in France, that there are church bells all over Europe. And he said he made use of these church bells, which I thought was interesting. And when the church bells rang, he would stop talking and he would make full use of the sound. We enjoy it so much, he says, I think it's better than a lecture. I mean, that's powerful. I mean, he's literally saying a bell is better than a lecture. So he said he used the bell to get in touch with, the church bells to get in touch with everything around him, the children, the flowers, other sounds. And this is a quote, "We have to really learn to enjoy church bells or school and our school bells. Bells are beautiful. They can wake us up." So, of course, I took this as a sign that I should move to Europe. I don't know about you, but after reading the news these days, I'm already kind of surfing visas from other countries. And I don't know, maybe this and, the need for church bells is what I needed to hear. So someday I'll be Zooming from a villa and I'll invite all of you. But another thing Ty talked about in this very, very tiny passage in this book was that we could use bell substitutes. So I don't know about you, but I can't hear any church bells in my neighborhood. Maybe once in a blue moon when the wind blows the right way, I'll hear a neighboring Catholic church. I don't even know if schools have bells anymore. And I certainly don't hear those. But thankfully, I can use other sounds to remind me to pause. Um, Recently, Andrea shared that she uses bird sounds to bring her back to the present moment, and I thought that was especially wonderful. As a sister birder, I thought that was great because intermittent bird sounds are so beautiful. I think as beautiful as a bell. Um, and I realized that recently I was using non-bells, uh, as Ty would say, for mindfulness. So I live in a neighborhood that is under construction, and I live across the street from a house that is currently being built. And this house has been a source of, I'm just going to say it, great suffering for me because, first and foremost, the builder chopped down an incredibly big, beautiful tree. And that was, I can't even tell you how many letters I wrote to county officials and protesting this tree coming down. But also because the house is incredibly noisy. And I work at home and I'm trying to have a meditation practice. And I know this isn't true, but I swear the workers know when I'm getting on a Zoom call. And they're like, "No, okay, she's logging on, get the concrete saw. She's on. Let's do this." So it's become just absolutely just maddening, this house across the street. But long story short, last week, I settled into my daily meditation and I thought, I'm going to wait till the construction workers are on their lunch break. So I thought I'd outsmarted everyone. So I sat there, got relaxed, started breathing, and it sounded like they were dropping anvils and bowling balls. Like just intermittently. I just don't even know what they were doing. I couldn't even get my head around it. So uh, I decided to just sit there. And I didn't decide to sit there because I was disciplined. I sat there because I was too lazy to get up and get earplugs. So I sat there during my meditation and I did my breathing, and the crazy clanging noises came intermittently. And I realized that this could be my bell, that this could keep me in the present moment. So I used these clanging, really loud construction noises as a bell. And, was it perfect? No. Was it birds? Was it a beautiful church bell? It was not. But I realized, you know what? Ty is not a snob, so I can't be a snob either. So you can use pretty much any sound you want if it works for you. It didn't work perfectly, but it wasn't a stick to the head either. So I'll take it. Um, so the last thing I want to talk about in this very short section was that you can use non-sounds as well uh, to bring you back to the present moment. And I thought that was interesting. Ty says that you can use rays of sunlight through the window to bring you back to the present moment. And this made actually perfect sense to me because not long ago, this Sangha studied trauma-informed mindfulness, and we talked a lot about getting grounded. And just really quickly, I'm going to say how grateful I am that we all studied this because these are trying times. And I'm really grateful for the work we did because I use these techniques and I hope everyone else is able to benefit from them too. But one of the techniques, which is a non-sound that I use, is I guess I'll call it the ABC technique, where you just look around the room. And if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't fall back to sleep, I'll start with A. There's art on the walls. B, here's my bed. C, there's the ceiling. D, there's my sleeping dog. And then I always get hung up on E, so that's where I get to fall back to sleep. But anyway, it's a non-sound. It's one other tool in our toolbox, something that Ty says that we can use. I'm sure you can do it with bodily sensations and smells. I have been, sometimes while my husband is cooking dinner, I'll meditate, and sometimes those smells will bring me back to the present moment. So I think the point is bells are wonderful. Bells can bring us back to the present. So can just about anything. And as Marcus Aurelius said, all life is meditation. And maybe I'm starting to get that just a little bit. So thank you for your kind attention, and I hope you'll share a little bit about how you feel about bells or your personal mindfulness tools that bring you back to the present. And I'm going to turn the recording off now, if I can find it.
If you can, I can.